I think happiness as like, that moment of joy when someone says something funny or, just a really good day and you have that happiness. I think that is a very dangerous thing to have as like something you're pursuing because I think it can be uh, guaranteed to fail sometimes. And then it feels like you're, you're a failure because you've had a bad day. And I don't think that's healthy at all. Welcome back to another engaging episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs and curious minds. I'm Spencer Walker-Fuchs.
And I'm Nancy Nash. Today, we're going to dive into a topical chat about pursuing personal happiness. We invite you to join us as we discuss our experience, explore our curiosity, and broaden our lens around this topic. So, kicking us off, Spencer, do you view seeking personal happiness as important or essential? Why or why not?
I think this is actually a complex question because my personal perspective is happiness as I define it is quite a fleeting experience. And I use the term fulfillment, which I think some people sort of merge both of those meanings into one word. And so I think happiness as like, that moment of joy when someone says something funny or, just a really good day and you have that happiness. I think that is a very dangerous thing to have as like something you're pursuing because I think it can be uh, guaranteed to fail sometimes. And then it feels like you're, you're a failure because you've had a bad day. And I don't think that's healthy at all. But I feel like the pursuit of fulfillment of like a contentedness in your position in the world and
Uh-huh.
the things that you do with your time, I think that's really important to pursue. So
Sure.
I would say in some sense I don't think it's a good goal, but I do think there's a similar goal that's powerful, which is that
Okay.
fulfillment piece.
So it has to do with how we define happiness. I think that's fair.
Absolutely.
Um, I think I agree with you that happiness can be an emotion that I experience. I see it as an outcome of a purposeful, like meaningful, connected, and as you said, fulfilling life. And I do feel that I've learned through my experience that like putting the things in place that lead to, my micro happiness feeling, make me like more productive, more helpful to other people, like more of an engaged team member, sister, friend, and partner. So I think coming at it from that perspective, I do think it's important to kind of like let those small things make me a happier person, if I'm able to be. I definitely don't feel like you should be denying your negative emotions, but I do think like, well, one example for me is that like I used to struggle with chronic lateness. And, we could talk about the why sometime, but really I realized, okay, even if you're still not completely correcting that problem, like you can show up and be in a certain state of mind, right? You could either be super apologetic and, anxious because you were late and stuck in traffic, right? Or I could just be kind of apologetic and kind of glum and, dragging my feet around like, I know I haven't fixed this problem. Or I could show up and I could be like, I'm really sorry for being late. So excited to dive into this. Let's go. And be, still be that like vibrant side of myself. And I think when I realized that was a choice and that it helped other people become more engaged, I felt like it was a worthy goal.
Yeah. I think that's really cool. I like that where you're approaching the situation with a positive and upbeat attitude. And so you're sort of actualizing the what you're after from the scenario. I also think sometimes there's power in like the, if you portray a lot of negative emotion around a certain topic, then others around you will have associate the same negative emotion around it. But if you portray positive emotion around it, they'll have a positive connection to it as well. So I
Right.
think
Or
that's,
at least maybe makes it palatable to them.
yeah, yeah, very true. Yeah.
So you use the word fulfillment. So what does it mean to you to pursue fulfillment in your life?
It means when I think about the things that I'm spending my time on, when I think about the opportunity costs of the things that I spend time on, so the other things I could be doing, I'm happy with the choice. And I feel like the world is improved to some small degree, hopefully, by my actions, right? To me, that's really, really powerful. The belief that, like, you're inducing good into the world somehow, I think is super motivating, at least for me. And it's also um, can make the hard times easier, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when days where I'm like tired or grumpy or had, frustrating interactions at work, at least I can think like what I'm doing, what I'm spending my time on is something that's um, positive and induces good into the world. I think that's really powerful
Mm-hmm.
for me. And that's a feeling that I've had. And to be clear, this is personal scenarios as well as, career wise. I've worked at a couple of different places, and the place that I felt the least fulfilled, um, I found it very difficult to stay motivated and keep,
Mm-hmm.
coming in with a positive attitude and everything, because we were just selling, another vacuum cleaner that we're going to replace with another one in a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, that didn't feel fulfilling. Now, that
Mm.
could absolutely be fulfilling for other people. I don't
Right.
want to diminish an objective in that sense. But for me, I wanted to be pursuing something that was, in my idea of a world,
Mm-hmm.
pursuing that good from what I perceive as good. Um, and then my job before that and my current job now, both, I feel like I'm working on some things that really matter. My first job was um, working at a ecosystem restoration drone company, and that felt, I'd go into the office and I'd feel like I'm excited to be here and to do the things I'm doing, even if I wasn't always successful in doing them, right? And
Mm-hmm.
frankly, I think part of that was contagious from others. A lot of the other people I worked with had that feeling of fulfillment from the work, and I think I got energy from being around people that were motivated in that way as well.
Sure. That makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah, I think I agree with you. And even though you didn't use the word like passion, I think
Passion, yeah.
having um, something in your life, you can't always be passionate about work, but even if you can find something within that work that you do feel passionate about, you can find, as you were talking about that, like meaning beyond yourself, that purpose
Mm,
beyond yourself. So the lowest paying job I ever had was in childcare. And children are absolutely wonderful, but it was exhausting and grueling. But I definitely, even though the job itself seriously did suck, and it was, for a whole number of reasons, it was more like the way it was set up, right? It had nothing to do with the children themselves. Like that was the part I felt passionate about, So it wasn't really hard to convince me to like start an after school program for them that I wasn't getting paid more for because I
mm,
was like reaping the benefits of that, seeing how much they were enjoying it, seeing how much they were engaged in learning. So I think, that's a really good point. And I think it's so tricky because, work is one of those things that I think I always felt like, okay, well, you just have to do this job right now because you have to do this job. And I think as I've gotten older, I've realized like, yeah, but I can find those sparkles in that job like even
Yeah,
in a job that's difficult or, in a job environment that's like hostile. Um, you have to be able to find that somewhere in order to kind of like feed yourself so that you can, be the person you want to be, like maybe at home to your partner or your family or your roommates.
absolutely. I mean, if you can find those sparkles of passion in a job, I think it's a huge positive impact on the job. But this also applies to, other things like outside of work. Maybe your hobby is what gives you feelings of fulfillment. Maybe just being able to give creative expression gives you feelings of fulfillment, or
Hmm.
take care of others, or go to the gym, whatever it is. But I think it's
Hmm.
super important to find those things that give you feelings of fulfillment in life.
Right. Yes, small and large, right?
Mm,
Because like those are all the building blocks that you need. Because unfortunately, like it can't always be a day where, you struck rich on the lottery and you got a promotion, and your girlfriend made you dinner. Like sometimes we need those small little bits. So you said something that I definitely agree with a little bit ago that, feeling more fulfilled on a regular basis, and there's science behind this too, not just my opinion. And we can share that if appropriate, but can help us be like more resilient and bounce back from difficult experiences. But I did start reading a book that got me thinking a little bit deeper about it. And some of the questions that she proposed, I think, are really interesting. So I have a couple of those if you want to explore them.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
has going through a traumatic experience strengthened you in any way or strengthened some of your relationships?
I've been largely fortunate to not go through too many traumatic experiences, in the sense of I've not lost, direct parents or siblings sort of relationships. But I did have the experience of my mother having stage 4 follicular lymphoma, and going through the period of uh, months of thinking that it was very, very likely we're going to lose her. And I think going through that experience has strengthened me in a flexible way, is how I would describe it.
Mhm.
I don't think I am more like a better arguer, or a louder person, or um a stronger willed person in the sense of like dominating. But I think I'm when bad things come to me, as they do to everyone, I'm much more able to sort of just take it, accept it, deal with it, and then move on than I was
Mm.
before that. Where before that, and I was relatively young, so like if I were doing poorly in university at the time, right, that was something that would really, really emotionally affect me. And now when I have a bad day, I'm not doing well at something. It's not that I don't care, I do care, but it's not something that the duration across which it influences me emotionally is massively reduced to before I went through that experience.
Sure. I think that makes a lot of sense. And trauma is in the eye of the beholder, right? And it's pretty common too, that we minimize what we've gone through, especially if we're able to be empathetic towards others. Because to me, that sounds pretty traumatic. And there was a point of like a week where both of my parents were hospitalized. And my youngest brother said to me, like a few years later, he's like, remember that week? Did you think, hey, maybe mom and dad are both gonna die at the same time? And I was like, yeah, I definitely did. But you kind of like, sometimes you sort of need those things to like, sober you to be like, yeah, I guess it was okay that I felt pretty affected by that. You know, I felt somewhat how validated, I think. But some of that self-validation is important too, I think. Yeah, I know trauma is a hard word to use because some people love to use it, and we
Yeah.
almost think of those people as dramatic. And then, some of us really steer clear from it too. So just like happiness and fulfillment, maybe just thinking about like hardships that you've been through that have strengthened your relationships. Because one of the other questions was how has finding purpose in loss helped you find a new perspective? And even though I have lost several important family members and friends, the first thing I thought of was actually when I lost what I thought was my dream job and wound up moving in with Brian before we were married and like changing all of our plans. And I was like, are we going to make it through this? This is a lot. Like, I'm making nothing, at this daycare job. And this is not what I promised him. We were going to like buy a house together between our jobs. And, we had like this whole plan that didn't work out. But I mean, it really strengthened our relationship. And we often look back at that time like, yeah, remember when we lived off Pace salsa coupons? We can get through anything.
That is cool. I mean, obviously it's not a fun experience at the time, but it's cool now in hindsight to be able to look back at this sort of shared difficulty and think about how it proved that you could get through anything. I really like that. It's a
Yeah,
really
and I
good way
think
to,
I think it is more about, that sense of fulfillment too. Being able to draw perspective, like you were saying too, like, okay, this is a really hard day, but I know it's not the hardest day I've ever had. So, we can do this. We can get
yeah,
through this.
for sure. Absolutely. I So the question was, has finding purpose in loss helped you find new perspective? I think so. Yeah, I think it's um the loss of my childhood dog is one thing that I look back at. I've actually still got her tags on my keychain. And that was something that like I basically shut myself away for a week after that. And was obviously devastated. But I think I've definitely become more compassionate and empathetic to people from it.
Mm,
Just because it's like you don't know what's going on in a person's day, and so there's no
sure.
reason to take anything too close to heart when
Mm-hmm.
they could have just lost their dog, and look at what that did to me. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm really sorry for that loss. See, and we experience losses in so many different orders and ways too, right?
Mm.
Because I didn't lose my first dog until last year.
Ah, I'm
Um,
sorry.
well, I mean, I didn't have a dog growing up, right? So it was interesting to me how different that loss was than losing a human. Like, there's definitely similarities, but I realized that, like, with a human, there's all these complexities.
Yeah.
Um, and with a pet, you can always be like, woulda, coulda, shoulda, but there's like this unconditional love.
Mm.
There's no
There's no strings, no
like I didn't feel
expectation.
like I went through the anger stage of grief at all. I wasn't like, that time you went to the bathroom in the house, you know what I mean? I wasn't, like you might when you, lose a person that you had a complicated relationship with.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good point.
And so, there are definitely things that we can do, I think, to cultivate kind of that feeling of fulfillment. Um, are there, you mentioned like exercise, which obviously I'm a huge advocate of. Um, but are there other things that you feel like put you in maybe all three, maybe just one of them, like a physically, emotionally, and mentally better place, more fulfilled place?
As in activities that I do?
Yeah, or just practices in your life too, right? Like for some people, it might be a gratitude practice or a meditation, um, or a nature walk where you really try to be mindful and notice everything.
Hmm. I mean, you already said one of them, which is exercise. Like,
Uh-huh.
whenever I'm exercising a lot, I across the board feel better. Like,
Uh-huh.
obviously physically, but also emotionally. I feel like I'm more able to engage with what I care about at the time and less easily distracted. So that's a big part of it. Another thing, and I don't know how silly this sounds, but for me, I really struggle to turn off my brain to like sleep or
Uh-huh.
relax and things like that. So what I do, I tend to have very long showers at night
Uh-huh.
just before bed. And for whatever reason, the, I don't know if it's the water or it's like the sound or if it's just that I've associated it with relaxation. Um, I can tell the worsening of my sleep without a long shower to relax and
Mm.
the worsening of my mood the next day if I haven't had that time to
Uh-huh.
decompress.
Uh-huh.
And so it's a thing that, everyone does every day, has a shower, but for whatever
Yours is a
reason for me,
meditative experience.
yes,
Sure.
very well said. For
Yeah.
whatever reason, it's become a meditative experience
Uh-huh.
for me. Yeah,
No, I think
definitely.
it's good when we have those rituals and we know that they help us. Um, yeah, showering at the end of the day definitely helps me, but then I do stretching afterwards, right? So my muscles are warmed up, and then I've noticed that that really helps me. So I think the combination, like I find relaxing, but and with more sleep, I suppose that does make me like a more fulfilled, happy person. But I think the practice of gratitude for me helps a lot. Um, especially if I'm feeling down or feeling like my world is small for some reason, but just doing it on a regular basis, that's actually one of the things that carried through from my religious upbringing that I really like. Um, just making sure that you don't have to be thanking God necessarily, right, to be grateful for the things in your life. Um, and when I came to that, like that was very helpful for me. Even if it's just that I was able to go for a walk before it was really hot out, or, I saw this cactus bloom that I've never seen before, or, like silly things like that. Um, if it brings you fulfillment, then I think it makes you a better you. And then the other thing that I think I'm sporadic about. I do think that acts of kindness towards others, spontaneous ones, like, I mean, you can premeditate them. That's great too. Um, they make us feel really good, and they do make that person feel really good. And I know the ones that make us more uncomfortable have like a higher yield, if you will, um, but they're harder, right? Um, so yeah, just bringing, a friendly neighbor some baked goods when they weren't expecting it, or if you're not really familiar with them, might be one of those things. For me, it's more like if I like what someone's wearing or I like their style, making sure I say it in a genuine way, because you just never know what kind of day that person's having. And I always used to hold those things in and be like, man, I love that girl's hair, but sometimes people really need to just hear something like that aloud. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for men, it's actually for some men, I think it can be quite difficult to give those little compliments, but also it's quite uncommon to receive compliments. And I think it's something that
mm,
like I do try. I do try to sort of give out compliments when I see someone that I'm like, oh, that's a cool shirt or whatever.
yeah,
If I like what their shirt is,
yep.
um, and so I think that's something that you can actually really positively impact a person's day that way. And I think that's really powerful. I do feel like I, well, I know I had like a particular shirt that someone complimented on me wearing, and I like wore it to rags because I was like, I was so excited that, it was something I got a
It
compliment
made an
on.
impression.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's really
Um,
good. I
yeah, and
think,
obviously I'm just talking about physical attributes, right? But like I think giving people compliments about, what you think they do well
mm,
is even more powerful. It definitely takes, it's not as spontaneous perhaps. Like it takes a little bit more thought, but I think it feels good to you. It's a good practice so that you realize that you're not just someone that always offers critique. Um, but it also makes people feel like, wow, you really noticed the effort that I put in.
yeah,
Uh, so
definitely.
anyway,
You mentioned or I'm now reading on your recommendation, the book, Permission to Screw Up, I think it is. And
oh yeah, uh-huh,
she talks about like the things that in a company make someone feel like have a negative culture, and how like being anonymous because they're not recognized for the things that they're good at,
mm-hmm,
it can be quite negative.
mm-hmm,
And just what you just said, like, resonated with me on that really, really well.
mm,
I think, yeah, if you can find those things that a person does well and should be
mm,
proud of, letting them know, I think is
yep,
really good. And I think gratitude is studied and shown that doing exercises in gratitude is deeply helpful for people.
mm-hmm,
Um, I think that's
yeah,
something that's starting to get quite studied a bit now.
yes, um, yeah. Well, the How of Happiness is the book I'm reading, and it was research that was done a few years ago, but at the time it was like I don't want to say unparalleled. I'm trying to think like research that had not been conducted, especially not with a worldwide population, which I find really interesting when things are kind of universal across cultures. They feel like they're so much more human, right, than anything else. But yeah, she has some really powerful points, I think, on what she learned about how to give good feedback in Permission to Screw Up. That's also a really good book. So, aside from book recommendations, are there any final key takeaways you want to leave people with?
I would say a key takeaway is that finding your passion, finding something that you're impactful, that you feel impactful from doing, is really important, but also recognizing other people on the things that they do is super important, both for yourself and for the others around you. Which, if it's a loved one and you're spending hours every week or day with them, them being in a better mood is directly better for you, as well as all the other positive impacts of like improving the situation. So,
I totally agree with you. Yep. And if you're like me and you say publicly on Facebook that you really want to make the world a better place, I think that's a really easy way to start.
yeah,
So,
absolutely.
thanks so much for exploring this topic with me today, Spencer.
Thank you for
Um,
talking with me, Nancy.
Yeah, and thanks to our listeners. If you like to listen to the rest of our topical discussions and our interviews with other entrepreneurial minded people, you can do that on foundersvoyage.org or by searching for Founders Voyage on your favorite podcast platform. And if you'd like to support the Founders Voyage podcast, please leave us a review. We welcome your questions and suggestions to make this
Oh yeah.
podcast even better. And if you really want to give us a hand, you can help us cover our editing costs and get early access to episodes by becoming a patron on our Patreon, which is patreon.com/foundersvoyage. So in the meantime, I hope you have a great evening, Spencer.
Thank you. Have a great day, Nancy.
Thanks. We'll
Bye.
talk to you soon. Bye.
You've just finished another episode of Founders Voyage, the podcast for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs. The team at Founders Voyage wants to thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We hope you enjoyed your time with us, and if so, please share this with someone else who might enjoy this podcast. You can also support us by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and by donating to our Patreon. Outro music today is Something for Nothing by Reverend Peyton's Big Damn Band.